Into living conditions at the Omaha Housing Authority. KETV Investigates was flooded with messages, calls, and emails from residents revealing bugs, rats, broken appliances, and one of the biggest issues, mold.
Now, with hundreds of units across the metro, several tenants have come forward expressing years of poor air quality. KETV News Watch 7's Kaylee Searcy has more from a mother living in a house owned by OHA.
When Tamara Kurtenbach first stepped into her home in 2017, her joy and excitement was overpowered by a foul odor.
It smelled musty, moldy.
Kurtenbach moved back to the metro with her kids, hoping to bounce back with the support from public housing, but instead she says she spent almost 8 years feeling trapped.
When low-income families find out that they have black mold in their house, a lot of times they have to deal with it.
Her house is known as a scatter site, one of hundreds owned and operated by the Omaha Housing Authority. Kurtenbach says it took 2 years of work orders, phone calls, and emails to finally start getting help her family needed.
They removed black mold from my attic.
But she says the problems only continued. Within months, an inspection by OHA showed an emergency health violation. A tube running to her dryer was clogged, trapping in heat. A year later, her house failed again. An inspection noting the dryer vent tube was still clogged, causing, quote, moisture in unit. Kurtenbach says she watched as spores spread throughout her house from the floors to the baseboards.
I have an email that literally says in bold letters, help. I have black mold in my home and my children keep getting sick.
So these are in the kind of the baseboards of her house.
KETV Investigates took photos of the mold to the Douglas County Health Director.
There's not really any way to hold a landlord accountable, I guess you could say, to making sure that that mold gets cleaned up effectively.
Dr. Lindsay Hughes says there are no federal or state laws regulating mold.
So if someone suspects that they have a mold issue, we are able to do a visual inspection.
But Dr. Hughes says her team will send a letter to the property manager about what was found and provide education and resources, but the responsibility falls on the landlord and sometimes even the tenant, because the health department doesn't have the capacity.
Whatever is causing the moisture to be present, really that needs to be taken care of before any mold can be taken care of as well.
Hughes says to file a complaint with the City of Omaha Code Enforcement, but even they are limited in what they can do. Superintendent Anna Beswanazi says it's written as unsanitary conditions, not mold, because the department doesn't have the staff to identify or test it. But if there's a leak, their team can step in.
Basically handle the accountability in terms of the repairs.
While KETV Investigates was on scene at Kurtenbach's house, an OHA maintenance worker showed up. Kurtenbach says he informed her a leak might be causing the growth.
It's visible to everyone in the neighborhood and anyone who walks past the house, so they can never say that they were unaware of it.
KETV Investigates was able to obtain reports from 2022 detailing the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD, inspected the North Omaha home, along with 23 other properties. Physical damages like chipping paint or missing doors were noted, but no discussion of mold.
I closed off the room and forbid the kids to go in there.
Black mold exposure known to cause rashes and hives, like documented here in photos Kurtenbach took of her children. After repeated trips to the ER for breathing issues, bloody noses, her own doctor wrote a recommendation letter to OHA with his professional opinion, asking OHA to, quote, please allow for family to find other suitable alternative housing.
He believes that our health concerns are from the black mold in the house.
Kurtenbach says that request was denied.
This is a real human rights issue that we're dealing with, you know. It's a human rights issue because every human has the right to safe, quality air in their home.
Kaylee Searcy, KETV, Newswatch 7.
Now, the Omaha Housing Authority says the house was inspected in May and, quote, showed no evidence of mold. But maintenance staff did treat the areas with a mold inhibitor. Kurtenbach was just recently transferred to a new home, but only after a tree fell on her roof. OHA says it paid for movers.
Well, tonight we're diving into a pressing issue for renters in Florida, mold. It's a problem many face, particularly in the aftermath of the recent storms.
But what are your rights as a renter, and how can mold affect your health? I spoke with renters, experts, and a doctor to find out. So what are we looking at here?
So this was the first leak.
This is Allie Caldwell.
Started out of this light here, and this is right in the bedroom.
She first noticed mold in her Brandon apartment after a roof leak last August. 4 months later, the leak was fixed, but the mold remains.
And they told me they really couldn't fix it, anything on the inside, until they fixed the outside. And I asked for an ETA estimate, said we were concerned about mold, and then it just went silent on their end.
Despite repeated reports to management, Allie is still scrubbing mold off the walls weekly.
All I know is I see some black stuff going on the wall, and nobody's coming to look at it.
Mold in rental properties can be complicated. Florida has no official standards for mold levels. If your space is unlivable, you can send a landlord a notice of material noncompliance.
You're advising them of a certain defect. You're advising that you can't live there. You're giving them 7 days to fix that issue. If that's not able to be fixed in 7 days' time, the lease, as a matter of law, terminates.
But me saying I feel sick and I think there's mold, is that enough?
It's not going to work, no.
Mold can pose a health hazard.
If someone gets sick from mold, it's either that they're allergic to the mold, or if they're not allergic to the mold, it may be that they're just breathing in so much of the mold that it's having effects on how they feel. If you can leave that environment for a few days, you start feeling better quickly.
So the leak was happening right behind this stove here.
Justin Cupo got sick from mold in his own condo. Now he helps others with mold removal.
You're solving somebody's issue and you're ultimately making their environment better, which is going to make them healthier.
Cupo says in Florida, you need both a certified mold assessor and a licensed remediation expert.
Just handle it as quickly as you can. Don't wait, because if you wait, it becomes a mold issue, and then depending on how bad that mold issue gets, it could be a much bigger issue all around.
For Allie, the end of her lease can't come soon enough.
We're tired of being in a place that has mold. You know, we're tired for our pet's sake, for our sake. It's just, we've had enough of it, honestly.
And there's good news for Allie. After 10 Tampa Bay contacted her apartment complex, they let her and her roommate out of their lease without penalties. The property manager says maintenance never saw mold, likely because they were cleaning it up.
It's supposed to be a place of refuge.
I mean, it's been awesome, but I haven't been at peace at all.
But for this Memphis mother, it's been everything but. She didn't want to be identified, but lives at the El Dorado Apartments off Ketchum Road. She says she started noticing issues in her unit back in June. Here's an email she sent her leasing office on June 22nd asking for someone to come out. What's been done since then?
Nothing. They have sent someone out. They did spray bleach on the walls, but that's it.
As the leaks and mold have spread to other parts of her apartment, she's been sleeping in the living room with her young son.
The bathroom is horrible. It's molded. I have a 3-year-old. He's constantly getting sick.
She sent another email to the leasing office just yesterday expressing how overwhelming these issues are, asking for another unit.
It's just devastating. It just feels like she doesn't care. It's like, why should I have to pay rent if I'm living in this condition? You know, like, what's so hard about just giving us another unit?
We went to the leasing office and were greeted with this sign saying it was closed due to COVID. We called the number on the door and the voicemail box was full. A manager finally responded via email saying it's being taken care of. But the tenant said that hasn't happened yet, as she continues to feel unsafe in her own home.
Because I'm getting sick at home because of the mold.
Reporting from the airport area, Janae Lewis, WREG News Channel 3.
8 on your side's Lenny Supal joins us now. So what is keeping this woman from getting out of this lease? What a mess.
Yeah, it's terrible, actually. Jamaica Wilson says her hands are tied because finding a new apartment requires the hefty fees of paying first and last month rent, plus a security deposit. And we saw the situation firsthand when we toured her apartment. She says she's living in squalor and in dire need of help. From the moment Jamaica Wilson steps inside the kitchen of her St. Petersburg apartment, she says she's greeted with the stench of mold and a gaping hole from the bathroom above.
You can smell that it's wet. You can smell the mold. You can smell it stinks.
She's lived in the Fountain Court Apartments home for the last 3.5 years, but 6 months ago, her situation took a devastating turn.
That pot is filled with water, and those are filled with water.
Can't even use your pots and pans set. They never fixed the upstairs toilet either. So it's literally leaking into the kitchen and into my kids' room.
Jamaica has 4 kids, but conditions were getting worse, and that's when she moved in with family.
It's mold in the inside of my ceiling, which causes my oldest child to have massive headaches.
She says her options to move out are limited.
My rent is $2,006. I don't have the money to move to basically first class, and security is crazy.
She says her complaints to the complex aren't getting addressed.
I've contacted them multiple times about the same situation over and over, and they're like, oh, we're going to get someone.
That's why she's sounding the alarm about her situation, but staying hopeful conditions will improve in the meantime.
I wouldn't even wish this on my worst enemy to go through this. I wouldn't wish this on anyone to go through what I'm going through.
Meanwhile, Jamaica says she called code enforcement about what to do, and we also reached out to the Fountain Court Department for answers, but still waiting for a response. Of course, we'll continue to follow up on this situation in the meantime. In the studio, Lenny Sue Paul, 8 on your side.
What a nightmare for that mother.